Welcome back to another episode of FastForward U presents Start Here, the podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Erica Avery, bringing you a brief intro for a pre-recorded Zoom interview with an awesome female founders panel we did for International Women's Day, Women's History Month, consisting of women founders from recent fuel accelerators. So these women included Kristen, Corlay, San Miguel, who is a social advocacy co-founder of Cabilde, Nandita, Balaji, who is an environmental impact co-founder of Inferno Guard, and Selena Shirkin, who is a medical device founder of Step Pulse. So why don't we just jump right in?
Hi, everyone. Happy International Women's Day, and welcome to our Women's Founder panel this evening. I'm Erica Avery. I'm FFU's communication intern, and I'll be moderating the panel. I have some questions prepared to move the conversation along, but ultimately this panel is for all of you. So please place any questions you may have for our panelists in the chat, and Demario will man the chat along the way. But I just want to start off with everyone doing an elevator pitch about who they are, what their startup or industry is, what their startup does, and what their affiliation is specifically with FFU. So why don't we start with Selena?
Yeah, for sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for coming. My name's Selena. I'm from Baltimore, Maryland, and I'm a sophomore majoring in biomedical engineering. I'm really interested in the medtech industry, specifically in medtech startups. So over the course of my time at Hopkins, I've kind of been trying to involve myself in a lot of design projects. So last semester, I started leading a team and founded Step Pulse. So we are creating an automatic UVC light box to disinfect clinicians' medical devices, starting with personal stethoscopes. So over the course of last semester, we took part in the Fuel Startup Accelerator hosted by FastForward U. And we built our MVP working and validated prototype that can sanitize an entire stethoscope in 60 seconds. And now we're really excited to continue our work this semester, kind of updating the prototype and applying to a bunch of funding opportunities. So really happy to get into that and elaborate more on that. In general, I'm really excited to be on this panel and share my experiences. So I'm happy to take any questions that you guys may have.
Awesome, and we're happy to have you. Thank you. Nandita?
Yeah, hello. Thanks everyone for joining. I'm so excited to talk to you all today. I'm Nandita and I'm a sophomore at Hopkins. I'm studying neuroscience and computer science, and I'm COO of Inferno Guard. And so what we're doing is we're reimagining remote wildfire detection with a simple 3-step solution that will allow for wildfire detection directly at the source of a fire. And our involvement with FFU has been, we participated in the Fuel Accelerator last fall, and that was a really valuable experience, and we're excited to continue being a part of FastForward U moving forward. And as for where we are right now, we're working on scaling up our product, scaling up our team, and we're preparing for a launch this summer.
Thank you. And Kristen?
So hi everyone, my name is Kristen. I am from Monterrey, Mexico. I'm also a sophomore with these lovely ladies too. I'm majoring in civil and systems engineering with a minor in sustainability. And I am the co-founder of Cabilde, which is Mexico's first civic engagement app. And basically what that entails is that we're making Congress data more accessible to constituents so that people can know who represents them in Congress, what bills they care about, and are able to know what's going on in their community. And just like Nandita and Selena, I was part of the fall cohort for FastForward U, and just like them, I'm really excited to continue to work with FastForward U. And I think that's something really cool about this community. Like, even though we did the accelerator last fall, like we're still being involved in it. And Cabilde actually just finished a technical team recruitment process. So we're very excited to expand our technical team to possibly launch sometime this year.
Great, thank you. So I can get started asking some questions to each of you. So Selena, can you talk about your journey navigating the medtech industry, and how did you get the idea of Step Pulse?
Yeah, definitely. So, I've always known that I wanted to be involved in the medtech industry, which is, one of the main reasons that I came to Hopkins and chose BME. But in terms of like Step Pulse and how we were founded and how we, got even the idea, we were approached last semester by two clinicians working in the Hopkins Hospital. They were working in the Hopkins Hospital at the peak of COVID. And so they were working in patient isolation rooms, which were, very contagious, especially with airborne diseases. So they were very reluctant to use their own personal, like high quality equipment, like personal stethoscopes in these patient isolation rooms because they didn't have an adequate way to sanitize their devices. So they've kind of resorted to other means of sanitizing, either, getting chemical wipes or alcohol wipes that kind of degrade the high quality material of personal stethoscopes, or they just chose to use disposable devices altogether, like disposable stethoscopes. And there were, a number of problems with those disposable stethoscopes, but the main one is it's very cheap, it's very flimsy, and you can't have good sound quality from a physical exam using a disposable stethoscope. So, they really wanted a way to better sanitize their own equipment and their own devices, and mainly in a quick manner. So something 60 seconds or less. At first, they came to us with the idea of providing stethoscope sleeves. But, we decided that that was something that was a bit counterintuitive because it was just as wasteful as the original disposable stethoscopes. And so we kind of pivoted and got the idea for a UVC light box. So now we're trying to make an automated version so clinicians can easily use that and it can better integrate into their workflow. And yeah, happy to give more specifics and details on the device if you guys want, but that's kind of the origin story and how we were founded.
Yeah, it's so fascinating to me how COVID has kind of helped certain businesses in a certain way, not only because of the needs of the pandemic fostering new businesses, but just facilitating people with, the time or the at-home environment to come up with new businesses in medtech or in any other industry. So that's really cool. So Nandita, first of all, major congrats to you for the recent win with the Arizona State University competition. Can you tell us about that and what that win was like for you guys?
Yeah, for sure. So we're really, really grateful and we're really, really excited for what that'll be able to do for us in the next few months. But I guess I can talk a little bit about like the process. So we had there was like a 3-round competition basically. And so like we applied last fall and then we went through the stages of it. And the final round was like a live pitch Q&A session where, it was the usual process of just asking questions about your product and elaborating on that. But we were really, really excited when the reveal happened because the funding will basically allow us to finalize product testing this spring, test in prescribed burn environments, and really get an understanding of our device's behavior in a fire so that this summer we can hopefully partner with landowners and actually deploy our product with like paid pilot deployments. So we're really excited to be able to scale up and take that next step and actually begin going to market. So I think it's a really big step and it's really exciting and we're eager to see where it takes us.
Yeah, it's super cool to be able to say, I know that person and I saw that announcement. It just makes me proud. Can you tell us what is the community like in the environmental impact space? And is that a difficult space to navigate?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I think one of the biggest things with the environmental impact space is that it really is so widespread. Like I know when we were, doing our original like market diligence, sort of understanding who we were selling our product to, it's almost challenging because wildfires affect so many people. And so when we were trying to sort of gauge that, we were talking to so many different groups, and people's experiences with wildfires are also so different. Like when you're talking to a timber company versus a nature preserve versus like a vineyard owner or a farmer, like it's very different experiences with the same like natural phenomenon. So I think that's really just interesting to explore. And definitely it adds a challenge in navigating it because different people will respond differently to the same threat. And you kind of have to like be conscious of that and work around that and keep that in mind with any conversations in that space.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Those are like such good points I never thought of before, that even, once you zero in on what you're trying to solve, that there's still diverse experiences within that problem as well. So next, I want to ask Kristen, can you talk about the political landscape in Mexico a little bit? And what are some of the major obstacles women face in that field?
Yeah, of course. Well, there are many, and that could be a whole other topic for another panel. But I think what Gabile kind of like really narrows into is a topic of transparency in Congress, and kind of like what prompted us to start Gabile, relating to what you're asking, is that my co-founder Valeria and I have been involved in activism, specifically in gender equality, since we were 16. And so while we were navigating that landscape, we saw a lot of problems that kind of like all nailed down into the topic of transparency in Congress and how we manage information. So, for example, there was this bill going on in Congress a few years ago that it really violated women's rights. And a lot of the political discourse was happening over social media. So, like on Twitter, or there was just like a lot of miscommunication. And we noticed that because we don't have access to this information of like who voted in favor or who voted against, we had a lot of activists literally having to screenshot like voting panels so that they could share this information to the public. And because there's corruption and there's a lack of accountability in Congress, a lot of activists are not able to rightfully like advocate for the causes, because we don't even know how my Congress representative voted. Like, how am I supposed to defend this bill or defend my rights if I don't even know what's going on? And so just like misinformation is just a huge part of it. And it's a very simple solution of just making data and informing the citizens. But unfortunately, currently the government does not prioritize that. And because of that, it's kind of like a very mix of political engagement where like people want to get involved. It's just there's like so many hurdles to get that information that everyone has the right to.
Wow, it's so interesting how different that landscape is, and yet not so different from our own political system here in the United States, but also incredibly like amazing that you've been involved in this process since you were so young, when I don't think I even knew what was going on politically at that age, and maybe not even until I was like out of college. So that's amazing. And I want to take a moment to just like reiterate how amazed I am by all of the women on this panel already, by all of the like incredible work that you do. So in that vein, I was going to ask Selena what it's like being a female founder and one of the only females on your startup team in the med tech industry.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great question. Yeah, for those of you guys that don't know, I have a team. There's 7 of us, and it's me and 6 other guys. And I love my team dearly. They are honestly wonderful, and everyone is so multifaceted. We have a really great dynamic. Like, it's been my dream to have my own medtech startup. So I feel like I owe a lot to this team and what we've been able to accomplish together. In terms of the dynamic, again, it feels really natural. And I think the key to that is just having open communication, making sure everything's organized, everyone knows their roles, and everyone feels fulfilled in the team. They're involved in things that they want to be involved in, and they're taking ownership of parts of the project. It really doesn't feel like there's a gender gap or anything. Like, we're all really good friends. We have a great dynamic. We hang out outside of Step Pulse things all the time. Like, we just went to celebrate one of our members' birthdays this past Saturday. So yeah, I mean, it feels really natural. And I think the key to that is just, making sure that everyone's on the same page. You're very open with one another, and you foster an environment where everyone can be themselves and feels comfortable, disagreeing, asking for help, asking questions. Yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, absolutely. And for anyone that doesn't know, Nandita and her team won the Fuel Fall 2021 Accelerator Demo Day. So I was just going to ask how things have been going for you guys since you've won. Yeah, definitely worth highlighting that one of our like wonderful women on this panel had that success last semester, in addition to her ASU competition. So we're sweeping over there. So like, how have things been for your team and for your project since winning Demo Day?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one, I want to say we're so grateful, and also congrats to the other people here who also placed at Demo Day. But I think we've definitely been moving forward and trying to make progress since then. Obviously, the ASU prize recently was a big accomplishment for us, so we're really excited and proud of that. But we've continued moving forward with like product development. We really scaled our team up so that we have a lot more hands on deck going forward through the winter, so that we can really move fast this spring in preparation for the summer, where we're ideally right now we're moving towards having our product sort of finalized by mid-March, mid-April, and then we can conduct testing and then deliver the product to landowners recently. In fact, actually, Kevin, who's in the audience right now, who's in California, recently went to go speak to one of our partners in person in Northern California. And so I think that was just a great opportunity to build that connection and get out there in the field at a nature preserve and really see what kind of land our device can be protecting someday. So I think we've just been moving forward with the product and getting excited to try to break into the market this summer.
That's awesome. I mean, that must be so cool to actually like have your boots on the ground and start to really see how you guys can make an impact, especially sometimes when you're just kind of tinkering away on your prototype or your product. So congrats. I want to ask Kristen, how can women find their platforms in politics?
Well, that's a very interesting question, because I think when we're talking about like activism and like social advocacy and politics, a lot of people think that there's only one way that you can be engaged in it. Like, for example, I used to think that if I wanted to like help my country and like be involved in like bettering my community, then like the best way to do that was to like be a Congress representative myself. And then as I grow older, I'm realizing that no matter if you're an engineer like myself and studying engineering, you're still able to use those tools to help your community. Like, I'm in civil and systems engineering, and I'm still very passionate about politics, about social advocacy. And so I'm using what I'm learning in my classes, what I'm learning on my own, and like what I'm constantly surrounded with to like help better those things. And I think sometimes a lot of people are very pressured to use like the same type of platforms. Like, oh, like I feel like in order to make a difference, I always have to be the one that's like making a speech and like just talking. And like, while that is very helpful, there are many other ways that you can be engaged politically. Like we're saying today is International Women's Day, and a lot of activists that I've been talking to back home, they were saying existir es resistir. So like existing is resisting. And so whether that is you're writing poetry that will inspire other people, whether you are making posters that's going to be helpful for a march, whether you're marching yourself or you're tracking your friends to make sure that nothing bad happens to them at the march. And if your role is staying at home and like having, like all the emergency contacts and making sure people are safe, that can be your platform to be engaged politically. And I think that when you realize that, you actually like, I feel like we think like the political landscape is like very narrow and like very small. And I think that just really opens it up to so many channels, to so many platforms on how we can like participate in this. So I think just like thinking about what makes you excited, what things you're good at, or what makes you feel like comfortable, and then from then just like try different things and then see how you can team up with people who are using other platforms in order to spread your message even more.
I love that. Existing is resisting. So I want to reiterate to the audience that if you have any questions, you could either throw them in the chat or just, feel free to unmute yourselves. We're all friends here. But next, I kind of want to ask a general question for each of you, and just to talk about some of the rewards and some of the biggest challenges you faced in your entrepreneurial journey, and maybe even specifically as a woman along your entrepreneurial journey. So let's go back up to Selena.
Yeah, for sure. I can start with the challenge and kind of tied into something that we're really proud of. But we are entirely a student-led team. The project for us kind of started in the fall/spring of last year, and we originally had a team that just kind of banded together. It was pretty random. A lot of people dropped the project, so yeah, long story short, it ended up being just like me and my partner, just over the summer, like working on this, trying to brainstorm ideas, trying to get resources so we can kind of take the project where we wanted it to go. This was before we had any funding. We just had like a CAD model, an idea. We'd done a lot of outreach and networking with clinicians to validate the need, validate the problem, and also like get their opinions on potential solutions. And so, we started reaching out to the BME department because we wanted to try to get some official support. But it ended up being, again, entirely student-led and student-driven. So I kind of had to go out and take initiative and find our own prototyping space and find our own sources of funding and really get a team together, because again, it was just me and one of my partners. So kind of all of that was a big challenge, but we really took advantage of the resources that we have here at Hopkins. Faculty are really supportive, and it's all about just taking that initiative and taking that first step. But again, I got a team together last semester, and we've made amazing progress over the course of, again, just a semester. Like, we have a fully working and validated prototype. We have a pilot trial lined up at the Bayview NICU hospital. We have some funding. We're applying to more funding opportunities. Like, it's been very, very rewarding watching us grow just from that like 2-student team into what we are now. And that's been really, really exciting. And again, it feels like a dream come true for me. And I feel like I owe a lot to this team because it's been my dream to have a medtech startup. So.
Oh, that's so precious. Honestly, that's so sweet. I love it. Next, I'll ask that same question to Nandita.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess I can talk a little bit about maybe like some of the biggest rewards that I feel like have come out of my experience with Inferno Guard and entrepreneurship. And I think one of the things that I love the most is just like gaining this firsthand experience, especially because I think what I'm studying in school is so sort of different from this environmental technology, like entrepreneurial space. So I really love just having this opportunity to really get out there and go to like potential customers with this product, talk to real people who are experiencing these impacts firsthand, and just build connections with them, learn about a new space that I otherwise honestly would not have much exposure to, and just go through that process of having this idea and making it into a reality. And along the way, I feel like, the connections that I'm able to build with not only my teammates, but, the people I'll meet in accelerators and the other people that you just meet along the way with networking and other events like that. So I feel like it's just really valuable to have that experience of taking this idea and making it a reality. And I've really enjoyed that. And it's a really rewarding process that I'm excited to keep moving forward on.
Y'all, these are such wholesome answers. I love it so much. Kristen, how about you?
I think like a very big challenge that I've experienced has been that my team, like when we started, like we're a little bit like all over the place. So my co-founder Valeria, like I've known her since like high school, and we've worked on a lot of projects together. And then we got to college, and then like we kind of like, well, like I went over here and she goes to school at UT Austin, and then we kind of like banded together again to work on this project. She studies international relations and Latin American studies. And so it's like tech and politics, like finding together for a project. And like, even though we're both on like different parts of like the country, we're still able to work together. And I find that really cool, because I think a lot of us like had challenges working with your teams throughout the pandemic. And so kind of like seeing how we're able to go this far, like being either remotely, can really like open up just like the importance of like communication, but then also that there are not as many barriers I just think that they are. Like I think just being able to like work with that and like realizing like, oh my gosh, like we're in totally different schools and we're able to pull this off has been really, really great, and has just made me even more excited, because it's like, oh, even though I'm not in Mexico right now, which is like my home country, I've lived there my entire life, I'm still working over here to help my country, even though I'm not there physically. And so those boundaries have been really great to see how they're still like breaking down. And then just like as a woman in social advocacy, I feel like there's a lot of women who are in social ventures. I think women have like women in activism, like you're seeing the trends, like a lot of the young climate activists are women. So it's very common to see women in this landscape. But then when we're talking about civic technology and also about women in politics, there's still some barriers that are over there. And I think like the greatest challenges that we face are just like people who are a little bit older than us, who have been, you know, in Congress for many years, or like who have been in data stuff for many years. Like they're telling us like, oh, there's only one way to do this. And so it's not just about like being a woman, but also being a young woman that's like, oh, you want to change the way we think about data? Like we've done data like this for many, many years. And so that's one of the main challenges that we constantly face, just like adults telling us like, you know, this is the way it's always been, like, why do you want to change that? But we're working towards that.
That's an excellent point. I just said with Carrie on a recent podcast, when we're talking about what inspires us most, I was like, I'm a millennial, I'm 27, and Gen Z inspires me so much. I was not nearly as informed and capable and fighting for change as much as Gen Z is. And it's every day I'm so inspired by everything. And that's why I love this job right now. I get to hear stories like that, and it's mind-boggling, honestly. So the next question I was going to ask was, what does it mean to you to be an entrepreneur? And how do you feel like you embody the entrepreneurial spirit in what you do or in how you live your life? So starting again with Selena.
Yeah, sure. One of the main things about entrepreneurship is always looking how you can make something better, how you can, to me, how you can make something to help people. That's why I'm so interested in medical devices and medical technologies, because, you know, I really want to create something that's impactful, has a real world impact, and can help the patients, the clinicians. But yeah, you know, one of the main things I've learned is you're never going to make something completely, totally new. It's always about how can you iterate something to make it better than what's already on the market? How can you kind of differentiate yourself from all the other competitors that are saturating the market? So that's always been a really fun problem to tackle and to approach. And then what was the second part of the question? I'm sorry.
How do you feel like you embody the entrepreneurial spirit?
Yeah, like I've been saying, you know, it's been my dream to have a medtech startup. So I've kind of been involved with startup stuff through high school and kind of got exposure to that industry early on, and I've really loved it. Like I love approaching a problem. Talking to clinicians is probably one of my favorite parts about, you know, creating a medtech device. You really need to make sure that you're like validating the problem and that there is a real need there. And so, like Nandita said, like it's really rewarding to network, really rewarding to like physically talk to your customers and get feedback from your customers and the clinicians and other stakeholders that are involved. So yeah, I think for me, that's really rewarding, and I've really just enjoyed all of those aspects that come with having a startup, and specifically having a medtech startup.
Yeah, you know, that resonates with me because, you know, I'm also in STEM. I'm a scientist. I'm doing my PhD at Hopkins, but entrepreneurship was just never in my brain at all at any point. And I kind of stumbled into FFU, and I was like, I love this environment. I love this spirit. I love, like you were kind of saying, this through line that all of you women seem to have of wanting to solve the world's problems. And doing it in this creative kind of ways, despite being either in politics or medtech or other kinds of engineering or what have you. I think that's a really common kind of underlying energy that you guys all have, and I love that. Nandita?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess I can add a little bit onto kind of what you were saying about like that spirit of entrepreneurship and how it's so important. I think that's definitely something I feel like I've experienced. Like, I think if I could like define what entrepreneurship is, I would say it's like, the process of just being driven towards bringing about like an impactful change in your environment. And I think it's a super important mission, but I will also agree that I feel like the skills you learn in entrepreneurship and the experiences that you can gain from something like that are so applicable in so many other spaces. Like, I feel like there's so many times when just like that inherent like risk taking and the ability to like put your best foot forward that is sort of required for entrepreneurship is so important for like any other experiences too. So I think it's like such a rewarding and valuable experience to be able to take this like leadership role of having this idea in the back of your mind that you kind of want to make real. And so it's really just a rewarding experience that requires a lot of like passion and dedication, but I think it's definitely worth it in the end.
Yeah, that really resonates, I have to say, and I think probably resonates with a lot of people here. Kristen?
Yeah, I think for us, it's like a lot of, at first, I remember like, I didn't even know if we were going to apply to FastForward U because we're saying like, oh, we're a little bit more on like the nonprofit side. And just by the way, announcement, like FastForward U does accept nonprofits and they have like the social innovation lab, like they do a lot of really cool stuff. So don't be discouraged by that. But like, I feel like sometimes when people say like entrepreneurship, like you immediately think like business, money, startup culture, like Silicon Valley, like very much like that. And for me, like it took so long to like identify as an entrepreneur because I was like, well, like we're not necessarily doing that, but the more you go into like what it really means to be an entrepreneur and like social entrepreneurship in general, it's really like tackling an issue with a creative like way, and like your way can be much different than other people's, but it's all about like trying to redefine something or better something. And so it's very broad. Like it's not necessarily like being an entrepreneur doesn't mean like you want to make money. Being an entrepreneur means that you're changing the way people think about a certain thing. And so at least for us, like just like redefining the way we think about data and we think about civic engagement in Mexico is a way of entrepreneurship. And it doesn't necessarily mean like the end be all goal is to make money. I feel like if you talk to other entrepreneurs like Selena and Nandita, like Nandita isn't, you're not going to ask her like, what does Inferno Guard do? And she's going to be like, Inferno Guard makes money. No, like Inferno Guard is helping to prevent wildfires. Like, like it's always about like the mission, and that's what it means to be like an entrepreneur. And for us, just like, I think there's like a lot of like sometimes toxic hustle culture when people talk about like entrepreneurship spirit, because they're like, I'm an entrepreneur because I like read so many entrepreneurship books and like I go and I wake up at 5 a.m. every morning and they go and I hustle. But it's honestly like being an entrepreneur, like the spirit is just doing what you can, like to continue and just going forward. And if you need to take a break, that's fine. But just persisting, I would say, is the spirit. Persisting in whatever you will define it for your means. So yeah, just going forward, just doing it.
Yeah, I think I too probably had that idea when I was younger in my mind that entrepreneurship is just being a business person in Silicon Valley and being a Zuckerberg or a Elon Musk. And like you said, it's just like this, I want to solve a problem, I want to make this impact. And I think that's also really important and really prevalent in this kind of FFU space every time I talk to a team. And I'm like really proud of that. And I'm really glad that you brought up those points, because I think a lot of people totally know where you're coming from. I want to switch real quick to kind of targeting what our audience might want to hear. So what's the biggest piece of advice that you have for women in your prospective industries and maybe for women overall? And going back to Selena,
Yeah, just piggybacking off of Kristen's point, one of the main things that is most important in entrepreneurship or in being a founder, especially a female founder, is the importance of persistence and moving forward and taking that initiative. If there's anything I've learned, it's that the importance of taking initiative, especially from my experience with Step Pulse, where we had to be very driven ourselves to get the resources that we needed. So really taking advantage of the resources that you have as a Hopkins student or as a student in general. One of the other main things I've learned is people are so open to talking to you if they know you're a student. So you have a very broad network to take advantage of. And, there's a ton of events. It's very easy to get connected with people, and definitely check out FFU and their resources. I can't speak more highly of them. I love FFU and I love their mission. So yeah, my main advice and takeaways are just take initiative and take advantage of your resources.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like you said, as a woman, really taking initiative sometimes can be challenging, but just taking up space, right? Especially sometimes in male-dominated fields, I'm here and I'm here to stay, and I'm going to take that initiative, right? Nandita, how about you? What's your advice?
Yeah, for sure. Honestly, I feel like mine would also be very similar to Selena. I think for one, definitely take advantage of FFU's resources. They have networking nights, an online database of opportunities present. They have a bunch of great ways to get involved. Even if you don't have your own idea, if you're just interested in entrepreneurship, I think they have a ton of great opportunities. So that's always really, really important to just get your foot in the door. But I think what I would say is something really similar, just don't be afraid to take risks and take that first step, as daunting as it may be. You never know where a cold DM or email is going to lead you. So you really just have to put your foot forward and go for it, because it can be scary, but the worst thing that can come out of it is that they don't respond. So it's definitely always worth it to just take that risk and go for it, because I feel like so much of entrepreneurship and so much of this journey is just taking risks and seeing where they turn out. So I think keeping that in mind and just being active and being bold in that aspect is really, really important.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent lesson, especially in this space. Kristen?
Yeah, I agree completely with what they've said about cold emailing and just going for many opportunities, because I remember again, I'm just very another. I remember being scared of Josh, for example. Josh from FastForward U scared me at first. I was so intimidated, and then I actually got to know Josh, and he's been a great mentor and just one of our biggest supporters. And so even if it's sometimes people have these titles of director and or these things that you're just oh my gosh, this person wants to talk to little me over here, and sometimes you're really you shrink a little and you're just a little intimidated, and then you realize that people are just as excited as you are for something you're really passionate about. And that's something that still surprises me to this day, that when I talk to people about Cavile and I'm I don't know if they're gonna like it, Mexico, they're not even Mexican, how are they gonna care? And then they end up really engaging it. And so you need to believe that other people are also going to be passionate of things because you're passionate about it, and that is a very contagious energy. So just being open and expressing how much you love, or you love a certain thing, and I think that's a very good vibe to project. And I guess my other point is really investing in human capital. I remember talking to some of my faculty over here, when I was looking at opportunities as a freshman, and I was just I have no work experience, who's gonna want to hire a freshman? That was me last year. And one of my professors, she told me honestly, sometimes even if you don't have experience, they might just hire you because they think you're kind, or they think you're a good person to work with. And I think that's also very valuable. Even if you don't know the best way to do it, and you're oh, I'm not so great at coding, Kabile is a web app, oh, I don't even know if I should go to Kabile. Honestly, who you are as a person, and your enthusiasm and your willingness to learn, and if you're funny and you bring a good vibe, that might surface a lot of more. Sometimes when you're in a team, you think you need to get the best like for example, Selena, like you need to get the best biomedical engineering students because that's going to bring the best startup. Not really. Like sometimes it's about like who is the kindest and who is a good speaker and who is like more willing to like unite the team and those things. So sometimes like, you know, human capital is very, very important, and just like keep that in mind when you're making your teams.
Yeah, that that resonates so much. I think self-doubt is very relatable, especially for women and especially for underrepresented groups. But I will say, I definitely think that passion is absolutely contagious. And it is for me as someone whose job it is to be in communications. And I get to hear all of your amazing stories, and I can feel it like emanating from you, and it lights me up inside too. So you're absolutely correct. Another question I wanted to ask was kind of what you've learned from failure along the way, because I think failure is one of the best teachers. So Selena.
Yeah, for sure. This is kind of touching on the point I hit on earlier. But yeah, in the beginning, it was really, really hard to kind of gain that traction. We started, one of the first things we did before we even like founded like the core team that we have right today is we just focused our energy on like clinical outreach. We surveyed like 54 clinicians in the Hopkins hospital. We spent literally like, I think the course of like 2-3 months, maybe an entire semester, just like talking to clinicians and like coming to them with different prototype ideas and having them criticize everything, because clinicians really, really like to criticize, which is great. We needed that feedback, and it was unbiased and just truthful. So it was very helpful, but also could be disheartening at times because you're like, I don't know if what I'm doing is really right. But that's the whole point of talking to people and customer discovery and getting that outsider's perspective, especially if it's a stakeholder for a product that you're developing, like for them to use. Like, I think one of the main things we've learned, and one of the main things that BME has taught me, is like how important it is to incorporate your users and your stakeholders in your design feedback and in that design process. So yeah, that first, like very first semester was really challenging. At times it felt like the project wasn't moving forward, or, we weren't going to go anywhere or be anything. It's like you said, it's very easy to have doubt. And a lot of times as a founder, nobody teaches you how to be a founder. You never know. There's like no right way to do things. Like there were a lot of points and moments where I'm like, what am I doing? Like, is this the right move? Like, are we going anywhere? Like, are people going to be committed? Like, do people believe in this? But the main takeaway from that is believe in yourself and believe in the team that you have, because we were able, like, just the power of taking initiative and having that self-drive. Like, we were able to go from like a 2-person team to like just having interviews, such like data from clinicians, to making a full working light box that's been validated, that clinicians are really excited about and really love. So overall, it's been so rewarding getting that feedback and seeing how happy our clinical sponsors are with what we're doing and with our progress. And that's only been possible because of that self-drive, because of that initiative, and because of that team dynamic that I have. As Kristen was saying, like, when I recruit a team, or what I look for in team members, is 2 main things: it's passion and it's commitment. Those are the 2, at least to me, the 2 most important things, because with that, you can have that self-drive and you can have that devotion to a project to really drive it and push it forward. Sorry if it was a bit long-winded, but I hope that answered the question.
Not at all. Absolutely. And I think it also brings up an important point about imposter syndrome, if we're going to name it, right? That self-doubt can sometimes manifest as. But we shouldn't be valuing people on how productive they can be, or how smart they are, but like you said, how passionate they are, and that speaks to how capable they are for what you need them to be on your team. And I think that's a really great takeaway. So Nandita, how have you guys learned from failure and maybe imposter syndrome as well?
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the biggest things is like, we sort of have, I feel like you come to accept that like failure is an inevitable part of the journey. Like there are a million different ways and a million different things that you will fail at, but it's really about learning from those experiences and building from them and moving forward. I know, especially with our focus as like a hardware tech product, there have been many times when like the tech feels like it's hitting a wall, or like last summer when we tested at Yosemite, it was an amazing opportunity and we learned a lot from it, but that also does not mean that there were not things that went wrong. Like there were definitely failures along the way, and it was really just about how we were able to identify those failures and act on them and move forward from there. So I feel like it's just really important that in any situation, you're kind of aware that a failure is probably inevitable and probably going to happen, but it's about how you kind of respond to it and move forward from there and take the next step that will hopefully set you up for success in the future going forward.
Yeah, I love that because, like you said, failure is inevitable, but you don't let it stop you and you don't dwell on it. You just take what you learned and then move on. And I think that's an excellent lesson and a hard one. Kristen, how about you?
Yeah, I think this relates to something one of my professors, Dr. Balaji, she recently told me like a few weeks ago, which I just think about that quote every time. I've been telling it to everyone since she told it to me. And she told me that like life is non-linear. You can tell she's my mathematical decision-making professor. But yeah, like she was saying, like, like sometimes you think like things are very linear, very sequential, but like honestly, life is some sort of weird polynomial. You don't really know what it looks like. And so I think that relates a lot to the process when you're like dealing with like a venture in general. Like sometimes like we talk a lot about like setbacks, but really like it's never really a setback. It's just something to move forward to. And I think also relating to like what failure is, sometimes you put a lot of effort into something that ends up like not working out or not being in there. So like, for example, like we invested a lot of time trying to see like if we're going to become incorporated as a nonprofit in Mexico or in the US. We went to like so many meetings, like meeting after meeting with lawyers. I was like in between classes going through all these meetings, and then it ended up that we're not going that route. Right now we're getting like a fiscal sponsor instead. And I remember like at first being like, oh my gosh, I've invested so many hours into this long process. I've like, I've put so much energy into like researching and talking to so many people, and like it ended up that we're not even taking that route and we're going to like a completely different thing. And like for a moment we're like, oh my gosh, we're back to square one. We're like, we should have just like chosen the other route first and like gone through the fiscal sponsorship. Like, why did we go through all that trouble? And like you feel like you've lost a lot of time, but you still learn things. And if there was a reason, like you need to trust yourself from the past. Like if there was a reason that yourself from 5 months ago or whatever thought that maybe like having all these meetings would be the right path, then you need to trust that at that time you made the choice that you needed to make. And even though you're doing something completely different now, it's because of you chose that other path first and that led you to this other part, and that you still have all that knowledge that you acquired. Like there's no way that you think like I threw so much time away. You still learned something from it. And so just having that mentality, even though sometimes it's like very hard, you just have to like keep going and like realizing it's just part of the process for all of that.
I can absolutely resonate with that answer as a scientist, when you feel like your experiments or what you've been working on was a waste of time or a failure. And you have to remind yourself that it's not all about, that piece of data, that, there's other things that you learned or gained from the experience that made it worthwhile. And sometimes it's hard to do in the moment, but it's true. There's so much you can gain from the process. And it's about the journey, not the destination sometimes, as they say. So I think we have time for one more question here. So I want to end off on an optimistic note. And since we've been talking a lot about problem solving, I want to ask, what is your ultimate vision for your field, or the problem you're trying to solve? And how will your venture be able to help achieve that vision? So Selena?
Yeah, definitely. I guess since mine's a medtech product, our overall vision and the company's mission is just to, make hospital rooms, patient isolation rooms safer by mitigating the spread of infection, both among patients and among clinicians. Like one of the problems I didn't mention with the disposable stethoscopes is that there's one stethoscope shared in an isolation room. So clinicians go in, use a stethoscope, put the stethoscope back, come out. Different clinician will come in, use the same stethoscope, put it back, and it just gets shared among clinicians, which is so unsanitary, especially in a hospital. So, our main mission is just to encourage the sanitation, the quick, easy, accessible sanitation of technologies. And one of the other main problems with current UV light boxes are they're either too big, too bulky, they're a bit inaccessible, they take too long. So we really, really want to make that technology accessible, affordable, and just easy to use as well. So that's our company's mission, and we hope to expand beyond just medical devices. There are so many other applications. It's a sanitation technology, can be applied anywhere where you need disinfection. So hotels, schools, private practices, elderly care, child care, all of those are really great follow-on markets, and we hope to expand our same mission to those areas. But yeah, in terms of overall vision for StepPulse and the company, really want to be in a place where we can manufacture our product and get it out there into the hands of the clinicians that need it. Every clinician that I've spoken to has been really enthusiastic about this because they don't have reliable, quick, accessible sanitation technologies, especially for items that are as common as stethoscopes. So we're really excited about that. And, as Kristen said, the mission is not money. It's we need to sanitize technologies. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you bring up another great point. We don't live in an ideal world. And when you say things like, oh, in this isolation room, all of the doctors are using the same stethoscope. And that's something for people like me who aren't in that field, we have no idea that that's an issue. We have no idea that that's, something that we need to solve. And so it just reminds me of all of the things that we don't even know about that we're trying to solve with all of these ventures and to make a more ideal world, right? So I think that I'm glad you brought that up. Nandita, how about you guys? What do you feel like is your ultimate vision and how you're going to be a part of that hopefully ideal solution?
Yeah, for sure. I think ultimately our vision at the end of the day is obviously we're addressing this massive problem, but I think we really want to make an impact. We want to introduce a method of wildfire detection that'll allow landowners to get the protection that they need. I think one of the biggest problems that we've seen is so many people are just uncertain of wildfires on their property. They don't know where they're starting. They don't know when it's going to come onto their land. And they're really just unaware of what the severity of the problem is. So what we really want to do is provide that information, provide that security and protection to a landowner, and just allow them to feel more comfortable on their own property and feel protected from these threats that ultimately environmentally are inevitable, but we want to be able to provide them with security and protection and just take one step in detection so that we can address these threats early on and minimize the damages that they can have. Because one of the big problems is that, wildfires will start small and burn undetected for weeks, days, and by then they're too large and the problems are massive. So we really want to be able to address them as early as possible at the source. And I think that's ultimately our mission, is to protect the people who are facing the biggest threats from wildfires, people who rely on their land for their livelihoods, basically, and address that problem and give them the security that they need and give them the tools to address this fire. And that's really, really our mission there.
Yeah, I think that's so important with, the way that climate change has been an issue, especially in the last few years, but, for the last few decades, been a mounting issue, but, especially when just a couple of years ago, a large portion of Australia was, burning to the ground. I think this is only going to become more important as time goes on, and I'm so glad that you guys are tackling this. So thank you. And Kristen, how about you? Can you wrap us up?
Yeah, of course. I think for us, what we really hope for the future of our venture. So right now we're focusing on the state of Nuevo León, which is where Bala and I are from. And from then we hope that people realize that this is a tool that people want to use and that it really helps. And so from then, hopefully to expand to the rest of Mexico and just really show the world that, like data does matter and it does make a difference of how we interact with our governments. And I think comparing to like the United States, there are a lot of civic engagement apps. Like when we've made our research, we realized that, wow, like there's a lot of these things going on in the US, but there weren't any in Mexico that were functionable and open to people. And so hopefully other people are inspired by this, and we're seeing kind of like a revolution going on in Latin America, and we get to see like people from other countries also realizing that this issue can be very solvable if we, it might take a little coding and it might take a lot of efforts and advocacy, but what we hope is that data transparency is the law and it's the standard for Mexico. So for example, right now, like the current transparency law, the way that the government is presenting their data, which is just like putting an Excel sheet on their website, even though no one can read it or download it well enough, that's in correspondence with the law. And so what we want is to demonstrate them that this can be so much better. And this group of college students did something that the government could not do. And we want to demonstrate that you don't need large sums of money. You don't need like to create a very complex thing. It is a very simple, and like 3 college students like are able to do that. So that's what we want to demonstrate to Mexico and to the rest of Latin America, that we do have the knowledge and we do have the tools to empower the citizens, and hopefully Cabilde can be one of the leaders in that field, and that we're able to be the ones like building these things for governments and for nonprofits, and just scaling up from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And like hearing you guys talk like that, and the whole night, really, it just makes me so proud to be a Hopkins student with founders like you guys, and proud to be a woman, in a community like this. So thank you guys for agreeing to be panelists tonight, offering all of your wisdom and insight and lessons. I know I have learned a lot. I love hearing all of your stories. So thank you. And thank you to everybody who came out and is listening at home. I hope you guys learned a lot like I did. And have a great night, everyone.
All right, everyone, that was our latest interview. We'll be bringing back some regular podcast episodes soon, but we wanted to make sure to make use of these recordings on the podcast. So make sure to follow us on all of our networks to stay up to date on the entrepreneurial community within Hopkins and Baltimore. And thanks for listening. I'm Erica Avery, and this has been FFU Presents Start Here.